Remind me we should talk about the stuff that's actually on Patreon.
Okay, Rob, we should talk about the stuff that's actually on Patreon.
Captain of the table.
Yes.
That is...
appropriate.
Yes. It's sort of amazing that we've made it this far in our occult podcasting. I can't say podcast, which is weird.
You just said it.
Because it's what we're doing. It's weird, though, that we've made it this far in our podcasting adventures without talking more about Frederick Myers. But today we're finally going to get around to giving the man his own episode and sort of remedy that fault in our plan. After his death, one of the most important books in Western psychology, written by Myers, was published and promptly ignored. So, one of the most important books for people like me, but for like other people, no. But we will bring it back. Yeah, we're bringing it back today. The title says it all: Human Personality and Its Survival of Bodily Death. Don't need any more than that.
Okay. That's an aesthetic.
Let's get going.
That goes really well with our podcast theme for this season.
I thought so.
Yeah, good job, Rob.
Thanks. My name is Rob. Rob Thompson. I am the Supreme Hierophant of the Secret Order. I am a mess today.
So you had a bad day. Oh.
My name is...
No, rights. We can't.
No, Spies from
No,
Ascot.
that was less than 3 seconds.
Yeah, that's true.
Or 30.
My name is Rob. I am the Supreme Hierophant of our Secret Order of Alchemical Actors.
Yeah, you are.
And Professor of Occult Studies. I am joined here by Olivia Litterall to my left, making all of those encouraging sounds.
Yep.
Hype man.
I'm your hype man.
Hype manning me. Her sister Brianna is to her left.
Aye.
She's not hype man.
She's
She's a pirate today.
bringing her pirate.
I meant to say hi, but it didn't work.
Aye. Savannah Verrett is to her left.
Aye.
Okay, we're all just doing the pirate thing. James, you gotta break this up for us. And James Kaplangis.
Hello.
Okay, all right, fine.
Okay.
Fine. I don't know what, maybe a Swedish yodelist? Descended from the mountains. Hello, or just a European tourist.
Toodaloo.
Today, we gratefully receive the occult confession of one Frederick W.H. Myers. This, my friends, is Occult Confessions.
We, the members of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors, do solemnly commit ourselves to a full and honest telling of the history of the occult as far as we know it.
All right, I'm going to do a little editorializing here for a moment, if you'll bear with me. Why, by episode 5, I'm asking the question, why have we devoted so much time to the soul? The reason I started this podcast in general is to put a voice out there clearly opposing what I consider to be the tired, reductive concept of us as random accidents, randomly popped into being on a random planet in the middle of nowhere. While it may seem like Bible thumpers, who I love as people, are the dominant group in this country, that's really not the case. And it hasn't been for a long while, right? We think that, the conservative voice, the traditional voice, the American voice is this Protestant Christian one. I really don't think that's true in 2018. I think that the voice is really an atheistic, scientistic voice.
Yeah.
Most people grew up to adapt an atheistic or what I consider to be an apathetic, agnostic worldview.
That's very well said.
Who's my hype man now?
Yeah.
You gotta step it up a
I mean,
bit.
that's our entire generation.
Yeah. Not just yours, though. I think it's across the board. We see people stepping away from organized religion. We see Europe becoming increasingly secularized. The United States is sort of sharply divided, but I think there's just this loss of belief in anything bigger than ourselves. And we're sort of trapped with no alternative between fundamentalists who think dinosaur bones are the work of Satan.
Correct.
And a bleak, cold, careless cosmos espoused by pop scientists on nature channels. I guess I'm not naming any of them. I'm being very vague.
If dinosaurs weren't created by Satan,
Then what is Satan really doing with his time?
I'm changing religions.
Satan has really got to get on it. The truth is, we were wrong to give up on the soul, in my opinion. and the immortal mind as well. If we realize that there's more to us than just fancy apes, and more to apes even than just dumb humans, if we can see the breath of God, if I can get poetic here for a moment, if we can see the breath of God in the world, then maybe all the nonsense conspiracies and political controversies and environmental degradation we're visiting on each other will fall away. If we understand that there's more to us, that we're part of something bigger that we don't understand, then maybe we'll go out of our way to take it easier on each other and ourselves. Because if it's all just a random cosmic accident, then none of it matters. So why should any of us care much about what happens at all? And that's really what we're after in this podcast. Finally, you know, all these episodes in, why I've been doing this. To show how the fundamental questions about who we are and what life is all about are, contrary to atheistic analysis, far from being answered. Anyone who tells you they know if you have a soul or if there's a God is lying. They do not know. They don't have the answer. And here we are with this podcast to show the degree to which these questions are far from being answered. A mystery remains, and in that mystery hides a real possibility for the soul and for God and for ghosts and immortal minds and all the funky stuff that we tend to play around with in the occult world. So it's not just occult confessions, right, to talk about weird things. Talking about weird things is, I think, one of the most important things we could be doing right now, because it reminds us that there are still mysteries to be solved and that there is more to us than just bodies that die. Let me just, okay, that's it. Yeah.
Like uplifting and depressing at the same time. I loved
that's
it.
My,
Mixed messages.
That's
MO.
right there. That's my target.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I go for.
I know, because we're all sitting around doing a podcast.
Yeah.
In white and black makeup.
I thought we did it for the money.
Yep.
Patreon.
That was a good one.
For the big bucks.
Let me.
Yeah, I did.
Let me just cite some of our sources and get that out of the way before we get started here on our fifth part of our soul adventure. I'm drawing quite a bit on a book called Irreducible Mind, which I have been on and off throughout this series. That's edited by Edward and Emily Williams Kelly. And Jeffrey J. Kripal's book, Authors of the Impossible, which I highly recommend. Lots of fun. Also articles from the SPR, as well as the Academy for Spiritual and Consciousness Studies. I gotta get hanging out with those guys. Those sound like
You actually should.
a good time.
Where are they?
Good
Des
time
Moines?
boys. I'm gonna guess Europe.
That's probably a better guess than
Field
Des
trip.
Moines.
Yeah.
I can't remember actually, but I guess I wasn't really planning on tracking them down. But now
We're going on a
we
field
should.
trip?
We are going.
Field trip.
Ooh.
Yeah, if you could hop on Patreon and pay for our field trip to the Academy for Spiritual and Consciousness Studies, we will podcast an episode to you. Okay, so back to Frederick Myers. Let's get to Frederick Myers. We haven't even bothered. Let's do it now. He was not formally trained as a psychologist, but when he was born in 1843 in Keswick, Cumberland, England, there was no established discipline of psychology, and there wouldn't be proper departments of psychology at colleges and universities until the 1880s. So we can forgive him for not being a psychologist, because there were no such things. It's like blaming somebody for not being an astronaut in 1750.
Oh, yeah, because they hadn't invented space yet.
Right, they were just perplexed by whatever was happening up above them all the time. Until Isaac Newton pointed up and said,
Apples.
Things are falling.
space. Everyone was figuring psychology out as they went along. He graduated from Trinity College, Cambridge in 1864, lost his faith in the survival of human consciousness after death around 1869, but he was plagued by his agnosticism, as we all should be.
Thank you
Wait,
for
can we
saying
pause real
it.
fast? Can
Yeah.
we define agnosticism real fast?
Sure, yeah. Friends?
Yeah. Agnosticism is like, it's different than atheism, because it's a different word. And what it means,
I've always
I
been...
feel like it's kind of like an ambiguous
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
belief.
Right
You
on, James. You
believe
did
in
it. Yeah.
something, you just aren't ready to say that's what that is.
You're non-committal.
Yeah.
See, that's what I thought.
You're
it
not
was,
committing
but
to
I wasn't
God, but you're like, there's probably something.
Atheists are technically believers because they believe there is no God.
Mm-hmm.
Agnostics just say, "Menina."
Yeah.
Emina.
Enema?
No, I hope not.
Enema.
sure.
You may need one.
Oh.
Anyway.
Call your doctor.
This public service announcement brought to you by James Kaplanchis, proctologist.
And I missed on the road.
He felt his agnosticism like a dull pain, for which you may need an enema, until he caught on to the mediumship of William Stanton Moses in the early 1870s. Now, Moses is an interesting guy. And he's someone we should probably devote an episode to at some point down the line. I've got to do a bit more research on him first. But for our purposes today, he was an ordained priest of the Church of England and also a spiritualist medium who talked to dead people. He channeled a group of not one dead people, but 49 spirits, led by a figure named Imperator.
I just want to
That's scary.
no. It's
That
like
is
metal.
really
Yeah, it's very metal. Very metal.
Imperator. Brianna's, I think most of her job here is to identify metal things.
It is.
Whenever a
It
metal
really
thing
is.
comes up, Brianna's our detector. She goes off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She starts beeping.
Yes. We'll reset her. Imperator was a higher spirit of the seventh sphere. Is that metal?
No.
It's just all metal.
It's
I mean,
kinda,
that's
Are
pretty
we working away?
I can
higher
get a little
spirit of
just
the
like
seventh sphere.
Yeah. We're just
Like a subtle.
That's a band album.
So Imperator's job was to perform certain spiritual work through Moses before going back to the spheres. Let's hear from Moses.
The history of the world has been the story of the struggle between the evil and the good, between God and goodness on one side, and ignorance, vice, and evil, spiritual, mental, and corporeal on the other side. At certain times, of which this is one, extraordinary efforts are made. The army of the messengers of God is massed in greater force. Men are influenced, knowledge is spread, and the end draws nigh.
Moses was attended by table tilting, mysterious lights and musical sounds, scents, which came from a substance oozing from his head.
Where?
From his head.
I mean, how did it come out of his head?
Yeah,
Like
which-
his ears,
which
his
orifice?
mouth?
I think all of them.
Oh, like, what was that movie?
Eusapia Palladino used to have it ooze out of all of
The
her
seance one,
orifices.
Yeah.
where all the stuff comes out of his head when he's like... Is it like that?
Which
Probably.
movie was that? It's
I don't know, I
Like,
It's a very popular horror film.
um.
Crap. Never mind.
Anyway, he had that happen. And he communicated in trance and direct communication from a voice that came from a disembodied source. So not only did he communicate in trance, but just like above him, sometimes somebody would talk. Did you guys come up with a
based off
movie?
It's
True
haunting in
story.
Connecticut.
Haunting in Connecticut.
It's based
All
off
the
the-
best horror movies happen in Connecticut.
Wait a Yep. second. I don't know what you mean by. What did you say about him?
Disembodied
Something
voice
happened.
Okay, so
above
yeah.
him?
So he could either speak directly as Imperator,
from his mouth.
right out of his mouth parts, or you could like hear Imperator,
Oh.
but it wasn't in his mouth parts.
Okay, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's pretty metal, yeah.
Nice!
No.
We got a metal score of 2 so far. Myers and his associate from the SPR, Edmund Gurney, were very impressed by what they witnessed, since the physical phenomena they'd encountered up to that point weren't especially persuasive. But Moses wasn't interested in sharing his physical phenomena with the wide world, which was strange. If you were able to do all these wacky things at this period, you generally went out and attracted
Even
an audience.
now.
Yeah.
He said, nope, I do not want an audience. He wanted to know what the messages Imperator and his crew had to share about the nature of the spirit world were all about. That's all he was interested in, was getting this communication complete and to share with the world. And to that end, he developed the ability of automatic writing, which he proceeded to do alone in the privacy of his home. So he was
Automatic writing.
okay. So automatic, yes, automatic writing is when you hold the pen and your hand goes.
It's
Oh.
so hard to do.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I
I've
couldn't
tried
imagine.
it a couple of times
Yeah.
just to, like, see, and it's just...
It's really
Because, like,
Did you write anything?
no. Because sometimes I've been able to get into what I'm pretty sure is a trance, but,
Yeah.
like, I can't... I've tried automatic writings. It's supposed to be, like, one of, like, not the easiest, but, like, the more natural ones to
Introductory?
try. Yeah, and it's really hard.
It is.
I don't know how people do it.
Is it supposed to be words or symbols?
It can be
It
anything.
can be
Yeah,
whatever.
anything, yeah. But it comes from the spirit, as long as it's not coming from you.
Yeah.
So basically, he's able to do all these crazy things, and he says, nope, I'm done doing all these things. I'm just going to sit in a closet and write. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds I about mean, right. yeah. It's a good source, I guess.
What
Like
a
a
guy.
closet.
He wrote a bunch of stuff. Oh, what?
I said by the closet, yeah.
It doesn't have to be a closet. All right. So going back to Myers, he not only studied the work of Stanton Moses, But he also wrote a bunch of really notable books. The first of Myers' books was Phantasms of the Living, which he co-wrote with Edmund Gurney and Frank Podmore, and that detailed hundreds of cases of people witnessing the projected spirits of living human beings. So you're alive, and you project your spirit out of your living body. Often this would happen as a person was dying. On their deathbed, their spirit would suddenly appear in one or several of friends' homes at a remote distance, and the spirit would then convey detailed information that the friend could not have had by any other means. Let's hear a couple of examples from Phantasms of the Living.
June 1884. On New Year's Eve, 1852, I awoke about 12:40 a.m. and found my room so brilliantly illuminated that I imagined I'd forgotten to put out my candle and that something must have caught fire. I got up and, looking around, saw at the foot of the bed a coffin resting on chairs, on each of which was a silver candlestick with a large wax taper alight. In the coffin was a figure of my father. I put out my hand and touched him when it became quite dark. The next morning I told my friend, with whom I was staying in Paris at the time, and on the morning of the 2nd of January we received a letter from Marseille, saying that my father had died suddenly at 12:40 on New Year's Eve, and that he had expressed such a strong wish to see his youngest child, myself, again just before his death. E.A. Schmidt.
December 1883. My present housemaid's mother, Ellen Williams, one night, 1872, distinctly and suddenly felt the pressure as of someone's hand upon her breast. At the same time, heard a voice of her son, and then a lad at sea saying, "Mother, mother!" She told her husband at once, and that she was sure it was her boy's voice, and that she feared that there was something the matter with him. When they saw the notice of the arrival of the ship in Liverpool, they wrote at once. A reply came from the captain that the boy had died of yellow fever 6 days out from Rio de Janeiro, given the date which corresponded exactly as the mother's note of the occurrence. Witness my mark, Ellen Williams.
In a time when telegraphs were the most prevalent form of communication, information was harder to come by, and so easier to prove as being miraculously shared. These letters are accompanied by further documentation confirming dates and notes from additional witnesses. 1873 began a significant saga in the life of Frederick Myers. He fell in love with his cousin's wife, Annie Hill Marshall.
Oh. There's always an
That's a little
Anne
messy.
or an Annie that people fall in love with.
Annie, Mary, is sort of the major names of the 19th
It's
century.
because
Like
it's
Jennifer.
easy to say.
Victoria.
Is that why, James?
Probably.
By all accounts, Myers' feelings for her were truly passionate, and they spent long hours together. But they stayed within the boundaries of Victorian respectability, so you can get your heads out of the gutters, given that they were both married to other people. Marshall's husband, Walter, was mentally ill and had to be committed to a psychiatric institution in 1876 for his manic and reckless behavior. In July, Myers was touring the Norwegian fjords.
Those are just
Like you do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What?
but they're Norwegian ones.
Yeah,
They're Norwegian ones,
Norwegian
yeah.
coastal
That's the
mountains.
difference.
I know, but
He was touring them with his brother Arthur. While he was away, Annie, guilt-stricken over her husband's confinement, stabbed herself in the neck with a pair of scissors.
Holy
Holy
crap.
I thought
That's
she.
metal.
I thought she drowned.
Is that
Third
appropriate?
disinfect- I don't know,
Say
she-
that's metal that she stabbed herself.
And you're right, James. After she stabbed herself in the neck with the what did you say? You thought that she had drowned?
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
you're right. When that proved ineffectual, she threw herself into a lake.
Whoa.
Oh.
That's
Yeah.
weird that you just said that, though.
I read it.
Oh,
Still?
you did? Well, never mind.
Yeah, so
Just-
she was sort of like Seneca, right? Opened his veins, but he
Yikes.
couldn't bleed out, so they stuck him in a bath.
Oh, yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was one of those people, multiple deaths. The search for her spirit became a significant quest in Myers' life. So after she died, he tried to contact her through the means of mediums.
That's sad. Wait,
That'd be
did
an
we talk
awkward
about that
conversation.
in like the last season or something? Why mediums don't try and reach out to their loved
Yeah.
ones?
Yeah, well, Myers was not a medium himself.
Oh, okay.
He studied mediums. And
Yeah.
Moses was the first of the mediums that he investigated.
Because of the dead woman.
He wanted to reach out to, yes, the dead Annie.
Yeah, Annie.
Yeah.
Annie Hall.
According to Jeffrey J. Kripal, Myers' widow systematically excised Annie Marshall from all of Myers' writing after his death. In Kripal's opinion, his masterwork, Human Personality and Its Survival of Bodily Death, published in 1903, was largely about his efforts to reconnect with Annie. But if you read it today, you won't see Annie reflected at all in the pages. Myers theorized a two-tiered model for the conscious mind, not unlike Freud's. We have, for Myers, a supraliminal and a subliminal consciousness. The concept of a subliminal consciousness should be fairly familiar to us. Subliminal advertising and things like this.
What does liminal mean?
Between.
Between.
Yeah.
Cool.
The supraliminal is the ego, what Freud called the ego, your conscious mind. It's what we're focused on in the present moment, how our attention is directed from perception to perception and thought to thought. It's what you're thinking about now, which I hope is this podcast. The subliminal kind of consciousness is more like Freud's subconscious, but theorized very differently. When I talk about Freud's concept of the subconscious in my classes, I call it the trash heap of the brain.
That's right.
For Freud, the subconscious is where all of our instinctual urges and past traumas went to transform into sexual fetishes and dark neuroses.
Thank you, Olivia.
You like that?
Yay, fetishes and neuroses.
Whoa, I'm the type man.
Put your mark on that. Myers had a very different view. Myers believed that most of our mental experience was actually subliminal, and that our supraliminal mind was moving around in the larger sort of pool of subliminal mental consciousness, sort of like an eye or a light, shining on different aspects of the totality that is our inner life. This includes our instinctual drives, but also higher dimensions of perception and abilities.
Like seeing auras.
Yeah. Telepathy,
yeah.
talking to the dead. So this is all encompassed within this giant pool of consciousness that is us. We called it the cloud in the last episode. We have this great big cloud of consciousness, and it's sort of like it's all in the dark, but then this little eye that is our consciousness goes around like a flashlight, lighting up different parts of that dark pool that is our subliminal mind. I mean, you can see how that's different from Freud, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it has supernatural ability, because it's us, like we are really this. It's not the leftovers of us. It's the primary what we are is this big dark pool. That's, for Freud, that's not the case. It might be big and scary, but it is big and scary. For Myers, it's not scary. It's not trash. It's everything, and it's full of wonderful and beautiful things as well as dark and scary things. We can understand this idea using the light spectrum. At the bottom of the spectrum, the infrared region, we have our more primitive drives that we generally don't think much about. Food, sleep, sex. These are, sex is a bit higher because it takes a little work. You have to talk somebody else into it.
In this day and age.
Yeah.
You should talk someone else into it.
Yes. Always talk someone else into it before having sex.
But not aggressive.
Yeah,
like
Not aggressively.
aggressively.
Well,
We'll do this PSA later.
It's complicated.
At the other end of the spectrum, we have our ultraviolet mental functioning, skills that we haven't yet evolved the capacity to use in any regular way, like telepathy and astral projection. So our consciousness has this full range, going down to must eat, must sleep, and all the way up to I can talk to dead people. And the infrared we're more able to see than the ultraviolet. The roving eye of our consciousness has only been able to make use of those mental capacities that have directly aided our survival so far. Hunting a woolly mammoth doesn't require the ability to psychically discern the previous owner of an antique necklace.
you never know, man.
The owner of this necklace had a special technique for hunting the mammoth. So for that reason, we haven't evolved to the point where we're regularly accessing this ultraviolet dimension of astral projection and things. But the potential to achieve psychic levels of consciousness still exists inside of every one of us, and has since the dawn of the species. Even our caveman ancestors had these capacities. They just didn't use them or they didn't develop them, they didn't evolve them because it wasn't necessary, vis-a-vis woolly mammoths. The better we master the lower skills of conscious experience, says Myers, the less attention we have to give them, and the more developed our superconscious selves can become. So the fact that we have supermarkets now is awesome for our psychic abilities. Because we don't have to worry about woolly mammoths anymore. We just have to walk up the
I
street,
wasn't sure where that was going.
pick up some food, and we're good. Hungry? Go to the fridge. Right? And that means we can now begin to develop our minds toward these psychic abilities. We'll evolve. Over time, we'll begin to evolve to become more psychic because our brains are less focused on feeding us because it's so easy.
Unless we get distracted with phone applications.
Oh, dark stuff, James. But entirely possible, yes, that we will... evolve ourselves into a little dark hole that we'll have to then crawl back out of to achieve our psychic potential. Myers would not be thrilled, I think, with the iPhone.
I'm not even thrilled with the iPhone.
Yeah,
But
I'm
then
definitely
how would
not.
people listen to this podcast?
That's true. All right.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's better ways.
What
Suggest
other
them to the
ways?
people then.
I mean,
Rob.
like online, but like
Yeah.
you
We
still
can
have to have a device.
We
for
can
that.
sell
That's true.
cassettes.
Internet.
Olivia's face just lit up. She's all for these cassettes.
I still have a cassette player.
If for a generous donation on Patreon, I can figure out how to produce a full analog version of Occult Confessions for your listening pleasure. So whereas Freudian unconscious could take on the characteristics of a kind of vault that we need to pry open with something like dream analysis, Myers saw the subliminal as having a relatively permeable boundary with our supraliminal waking consciousness, so that our subliminal selves are regularly bleeding into and shifting the location of our conscious light through our vast, complex inner being.
I like that more.
Yeah, right?
It makes sense to me more. I don't know.
For those of you who aren't Freudians, his basic concept of dream analysis is that, the things that we have a hard time remembering, the things that we have to struggle to remember about our dreams, are the keys to the meaning of our dreams. And it's because our subconscious is sort of perpetually hiding from us. So we have to break our way into it. We have to trick our way into understanding it.
I mean, like to some degree, but
don't know.
I don't
Yeah,
think
from
fully.
From an occult perspective.
I think to some degree there's some sort of blockage, but
I think that's the time that's supposed to be the easiest to access that
Yeah.
part of yourself.
yeah.
Right, but then when you're awake,
Right, it's when
and
you're
making
conscious.
your toast.
Yeah, but you have to train yourself.
Yeah,
to
see,
do
I
that.
can just kind of.
And Myers is
it's in
saying,
and out.
yes, this is a natural part of what we should be able to do.
I
That
like-
there should be a push and pull, a spilling.
I like this idea that, the ethereal or the supernatural is elusive to it's slippery to us. When we start to think about it, it avoids us.
It slips away from
It
us.
slips away from us.
I think that's true too. Yeah.
Some quantum stuff. We can talk about that next time.
According to the Kellys, or on a James episode for our Patreon listeners, according to the Kellys, what Myers wanted to do was create a system that included the abnormal as part of a larger picture of how the world works, rather than exclude it because it didn't fit into the system the way academic psychology had defined it. Let's take one of Myers' apparitions of the living. Your basic run-of-the-mill materialist scientist would say that an apparition of the living is just a delusion or a hallucination, and the fact that death happens to occur at the same time, just a coincidence.
But are there such things as coincidences?
Ah, yes. In the vast collection of these stories, of which Myers has hundreds and hundreds, it's difficult to explain the body of evidence away as a whole conspiracy of coincidences. Here, the world, the way science has defined it, is excluding the possibility of phenomena because they don't fit into the rules for how the world works. But good science is about giving up your rules so that you can make sense of any evidence that presents itself. Right?
It's kind of paradoxical.
Assuming that these apparitions are delusions is putting the conclusion before the experiment. But we see this pretty often.
Yeah.
Whenever anything purportedly supernatural or paranormal occurs, it's just, oh, well, I can explain that without studying it. It must be this, that, or the other.
You got to study it.
You fit it
Got
into
to.
what you want it to be.
Right.
That's
The
what
world
I do.
works this way. We've already decided
Yeah.
that. Therefore, this isn't part of it. But
Yeah.
what if it is, says Myers. We've got to face up to the reality of all the weird things on the fringes of human experience and expand the way we understand our minds and our existence so that it encompasses everything. Myers offers lots of evidence for this idea, from hypnotism to near-death experiences to mysticism and trance. We've already talked about dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personalities, in our last episode, and we've talked about memory. Today, we're going to bring the discussion home by turning to mysticism and genius. Let's talk about mysticism. We're starting with a category of experience that comes most obviously into the scopes of the paranormal in mystical encounters. I'm going to lean heavily here on Kelly and Grasso's essay in Irreducible Mind. These are wildly controversial in the social sciences and specifically in the subfield of religious studies focused on religious experience, so we are giving you a kind of fringe view, but it's an academic view by people who have studied this at length and come to what I consider to be reasonable conclusions. We'll see if I persuade my alchemical actors.
Yeah, let's see.
William James and Carl Jung were two other big-name psychologists from the turn of the century that believed in the reality of mystical experiences, so certainly we're not alone. Let's just lay that out. So let's define our terms before we get into it. For the religious experience folks, mysticism is an encounter with a state of pure consciousness.
I see.
This is kind of deep meditation, kind of trance that puts you in touch with divine beings. You're immersed by a power that's bigger than you are. You are in the mind of God.
Sounds horrifying.
Yeah, that does sound pretty terrifying.
That definition makes it sound a little rough.
Let's play with Jacob Boehme for a second. He's a great source.
Ask politely
Yes,
first.
I think we need
Dear
consent.
Jacob Boehme,
There we go.
may we play?
Thank you.
Should we wait for a response? Because he's been
No, he
dead
said
for
it's
like
fine.
500 years.
It's
Okay.
fine.
He's a great source for occultists because while he was a good Protestant German, his visions opened up a whole new way of thinking about the soul and God. He was tortured by discrepancies between the Old and New Testament gods and the problem of evil, or theodicy.
I only read those at 5 a.m.
Theodicies?
Yes.
Are you thinking about the Odyssey?
No, just all of the different theodicies people come up with.
Oh, philosophical arguments
Yeah.
about the
Yes.
existence of evil. Okay.
Yeah.
So Boehme has this problem as well. You are a latter-day Boehme. You are the Joseph Smith of Boehmes.
Yep.
He dwelled on these things until one day he had a mystical vision prompted by gazing at the reflection of light in a pewter cup.
I should probably try that.
Yeah, you should get a pewter cup if you don't have one.
I'll call Mom later.
I
But
say
you
we have
shouldn't.
a bunch in our house.
Yeah, don't stare at it. It caught his eye.
Sometimes I just kind of sit in our dining room and stare at them.
Good. You're on the path. He learned about how God came into being and saw that we were microcosms of God, living in the space between his wrath and love, in an area where light and dark, good and evil, do battle. Battle.
So
That sounds violent.
wait, so he was saying that we're in God's mind, and we're part of the subconscious of God.
Yeah.
Okay.
The gate was opened to me. That in 1/4 of an hour I saw and knew more than if I had been many years together at a university. For I saw and knew the being of all beings. I saw in myself all the 3 worlds, namely the divine, the dark, and the external and visible world. And I saw and knew the whole working essence, in the evil and the good and the original and the existence of each of them.
There's a common core to mystical experience. Mystics feel that their experiences possess a reality. It's also very positive, often with life-altering consequences, giving them greater perspective and appreciation, sort of like a near-death experience. And this comes complete with a powerful emotional experience. And the encounter is beyond articulation. It doesn't fall inside the boundaries of our terrestrial logic and language. The Buddha, having meditated for 40 days under the Bodhi tree, saw the truth and the path to enlightenment. Jesus of Nazareth wandered the woods, where he confronted and rejected Satan, and came back with a plan for his ministry. These are the mystical experiences, like Boehme's, that reveal greater truths.
They both involve trees.
Yep. I think you might have missed the point
But
a little
it's-
bit.
I'm looking deep, Savannah. So
I just
follow
think
me.
that it's so interesting because so many different beliefs they have that same theme. In mine, Odin, he went through he gave up his eye so he could get the runes and the knowledge to use them in magic and shit.
Did it take 40 days?
It was like 7 or 5 days and nights.
he
Seven.
took less
Seven
time.
too.
It was 7.
Less time. Well, both the Buddha and
But he
Jesus.
also hung from a tree, like by his
Yeah.
toes.
There's a tree. There's your tree,
And
James.
Yep,
his
I knew
eye
it.
got removed and thrown in a well.
You know.
In water.
Yeah.
The Jesus and Buddha, actually, there's a lot of connections. Odin, I don't know so much.
Well,
that
even-
sounds like less so, but it was 40 days and 40 nights for both of them. Both of them were tempted by demons, Satan in Jesus' case, or something like Satan, and in Buddha's case, Mara, the tempter. So very similar stories.
So that just corresponds through a lot of religions that you look at. I don't know, it's just really
Is
interesting.
Odin tempted by a thing?
Well,
Somebody's
there's
like, hey, don't you want to keep those eyes? He's like, no.
Well,
You just broke Brianna.
He has to say no? He must say no because he gives them up. Nobody's like, do you want to keep
he's
those?
not the person who's ever been tempted. It's because of how things started. There is this evil frost giant dude that the gods killed.
So he's trying to make up
give-
for some stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, so is Jesus eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Buddha in his way.
Is there a significance to, well, I'm sure there is, but do you know what the significance is for the 40 days and the 40 nights?
It's in Judeo-Christian and in Asian religions, it's always a period of, it rains for 40 days and 40 nights in Noah's flood. There's a kind of purging, cleansing, penance. Yeah.
The Greeks believe that it takes 40 days and 40 nights for the spirit to traverse into the afterlife.
Yeah. I feel like we've talked about this before.
Yes, we have.
We have, yeah.
Here on Occult Confessions, we will repeat ourselves periodically. The argument against the view that mysticism is a real thing with a common core of experience is that it's actually a social thing. So this are the people that say, nope, lies, there are no mystical experiences. Here's how it goes. We experience what we're told we're supposed to experience. So there's this thorny problem, but it's not necessarily insurmountable. So in other words, we have a mystical experience because we hear what it's supposed to be like, and then we have that experience based on what we hear. The existence of a common core across cultures is difficult to explain, though.
It's the same as like alien abductions. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's a common core to alien abductions,
Like,
therefore
people know what they're supposed to say.
when they think they go through it, what they're actually going through is their own psychic, but they've predisposed themselves to have these experiences. But it's weird that the Buddha and Jesus, having come from completely different cultures, and Odin coming from the icy Northlands, icy Norways, would all have these similar encounters. How would that be? Could they possibly be raised to have similar mystical experiences? The Sufi mystics in Persia, on the Arabian Peninsula, also on the Arabian Peninsula, the Christian mystic going back through the ages in Europe, and the Buddhist and Taoist mystics in the Asian world all have very similar mystical experiences, even though they have incredibly different cultural backgrounds. It could be that humans share common teachings about mysticism, which explains the common core, while leaving room for that mystical experience to be socially predetermined. We could resort to the supernatural feats performed by mystics, then, to answer this common core problem if we wanted to. There's the accomplishments of the yogis, for example, in India, who come up in our series on the American Occult, our very first series. Yogis are able to do all sorts of incredible things. Remember, they could cause plants to become fully grown from seeds in an hour, or remove their intestines, put them back in again.
That was
How could we forget? Yeah. Among Catholic saints, there's cases of people who've gone without eating for years, or withstood direct contact with fire or boiling water without pain or injury, and the giving off of an otherworldly glow. I was just reading about Alan Bennett, who was an associate of Aleister Crowley's, who claimed to be able to withstand mosquitoes and leeches in a similar fashion. Like, he could stick his arm in a river full of leeches and pull it out without any leeches, or lay in a cloud of mosquitoes and not be bitten.
Wow.
I wish I could do that.
Yeah. Today, researchers investigate mysticism under laboratory conditions, fun fact, using LSD. And other psychotropic drugs. Yes, you too can sign up for these trials.
Asking me to talk about conspiracy.
Yeah, I know. I'm sitting here like trying not to talk about certain.
Well, what do you got?
theories.
What do you got? Conspiracies.
There's the government and the LSD experiments.
Yeah, with all the kids.
What
and
about
shit.
It goes back to like before Vietnam.
Yeah.
I thought it would be after Vietnam. But
No.
that's amazing. Wow. Conspiracies.
No.
How does this tie in with mysticism?
I don't think it does. I think it's just the government
a way to
trying
break
to control us.
Yeah,
and
that's
break
how
us.
they're control
They
people.
would
so they
use
can them as spies.
LSD to like basically as an
Thought control
experimental
us.
drug to break people's minds.
So
Oh,
that
to
they
break
could be,
your mind.
So that they could
Yeah.
be used for like spies and stuff.
So they
that-
could rebuild you, like
So that-
military guys. This was
Yeah.
a huge thing in like the 60s.
Yeah.
These studies revealed that there were tiers to a drug-induced mystical experience, one of them, I guess, being broken. The deepest tiers opened individuals up to memories of their own birth, encounters with spirits and other supernatural entities, and memories of past lives.
Your own birth?
Yeah.
That's got to be a rough memory. Oh.
Researchers, well, I mean, as I recall, and this hasn't been that long since I've been in the birth room, for the baby,
But
not so
can
bad.
no, but can you imagine coming out of another person, but like
It's jarring, yeah. I think it's a
sliding out.
jarring transition,
Like-
don't get me wrong.
It's like going through a dark tunnel. But
Yeah, and like you gotta be like
Researchers who study these kinds of things view the brain as a kind of filtering mechanism. Our consciousness is capable of accessing everything that's ever happened to us and everything that's happened to anyone, anywhere. Think about that.
Ooh, that's the subliminal.
Yeah, and it's sort of
The
like
cloud.
the Jungian archetypes, too. Like,
Yeah.
we can access not just our cloud, but the clouds of anyone, anywhere.
Right, but you can't access them all at once. 'Cause
I wouldn't
then
recommend it.
You would just
That's how the government breaks
You
you.
would go
Right.
insane.
That's how the government gets you. But this information would crush us, yes, as Olivia is pointing out, if we had access to all of it. So our brains contain and filter our consciousness, which is much bigger than the physical brain itself.
That's
So far,
deep.
so good?
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful.
All right. So mysticism, though, I think it's as far as proof is concerned, I like it. I am interested in mystical experience, but there's another variant of mystical experience that we consider to be more natural and that we don't exclude from the, I guess, corpus of things that happen. Right?
Is it
Yeah, I don't
called
think-
genius?
It is indeed. Very how genius of you, James, to come to that conclusion.
I remembered it.
Yeah,
You
stop
really-
reading ahead.
Let's take stop reading ahead.
mysticism answered.
Stop doing your homework.
You said it earlier, Savannah.
Let's take another more natural angle on this, which is genius. Genius has similar qualities to mysticism, but is considered a natural aspect of our
It's
lives.
a better theory. 'Cause
Let's hear from F.W.H. Myers.
Genius should rather be regarded as a power of utilizing a wider range than other men can utilize, of faculties in some degree innate in all. A power of appropriating the results of subliminal mentation to subserve the supraliminal stream of thought, so that an inspiration of genius will be in truth a supraliminal uprush, an emergence into the current of ideas which the man is consciously manipulating of other ideas which he has not consciously originated.
What the hell was that?
Yeah,
I
I
literally no idea.
What
I'm
did
lost.
he just say?
All right, so there's
I've never
got
been
you.
so concerned.
For the state of your mind?
For
Or
his state of
Okay.
mind.
There's a couple of ways we can think about it. When I was in high school and I still did math problems, I would sometimes go to bed having not quite figured the problem out. My math teacher actually encouraged this. Sometimes, and often enough, you'd wake up having either solved the problem or made progress on it. Has anybody had this experience?
Yes,
How
but
kind of
not
Yeah.
with math.
Sure.
I've had it with video games.
Yeah.
Where, like,
Yeah, I can agree to that.
Sometimes, you know, like bosses have certain tricks to them, or there's like puzzles in video games, and you're like, I have no idea how to do this, and then you like go to sleep, and then you wake up in the middle of the night, and you're like, oh my god, I know how to do it.
Like that boss fight that took you, like, you did it like 10 times before you went to bed, and then first thing you wake up and you get it done, and you're like, ooh.
Yep.
But think how much more useful it would be if you did it with math.
Math.
Yeah.
I've done it with
Math
math.
is useless.
I've done it with math while driving to school. Just like out of nowhere, I'm like, oh yeah, that problem.
Sometimes
yeah, I
that's
figured that
happened
out.
to me, but not after sleep. Like,
Oh, okay.
after, like, I don't know, eating.
Yeah,
I just
Mr.
gave up on
Mr.
that.
Maley gave me that tip. He spelled his name with a 4. The 4 was silent.
That's hilarious. I like this guy.
Mr. Maley. Yeah, he had a sausage tattooed on his toe.
Now I
Hey,
like
I like
I like
Sausage
that, yeah.
too.
Very interesting calculus teacher. Okay, anyway, so yes, he did encourage this trick, and it worked. It worked for me many times. The thing was that I hadn't been thinking of the math problem or the game problem, or this happens to me also when I'm writing or doing some scholarship or research. I wasn't thinking of it. I was sleeping, right? I wasn't trying to work out the problem.
Your conscious mind.
I won't have something quite figured out. I'll go away from it and then come back, and as soon as I pick it up, I've got the solution. Your brain is working on a problem while you're away from it. That's why people often have great ideas in the shower.
Oh, okay.
Now you're with me?
Now I get it.
When your conscious mind steps away from a problem, your subliminal mind continues to work it through with much greater resources than the small window of your conscious mind can access.
Man, this is
right?
crazy, dude.
Yeah.
I feel so like...
It's like that flashlight that's focused on that tiny corner suddenly just gets dropped down into the pool and can go anywhere.
Now I'm like overthinking all of my existence because I'm just like, because it happens when I play bass or something too. Like I just kind of, if I'm struggling with a part, it just kind of, I take a break and it just comes back and I'm there.
When you relax your consciousness, you can tap into your subliminal mind, which is much bigger and far-reaching in power and scope. And that subliminal mind can open onto a still bigger universal transcendent consciousness of all things everywhere. I just want to tell a couple quick stories about calculating prodigies. One of the first recorded in the modern era was Zira Colburn, born in Cabot, Vermont.
Cheese!
Home of cheese.
Cabot cheese!
You got so excited.
In 1804.
I've never seen you so excited.
It's really good block cheese.
It is.
His family thought he might be mentally disabled. Until at the age of 6, we don't find mental disabilities.
No,
I think she's laughing at the cheese still.
No, it's just that after she said the whole cheese thing,
you started talking about mental disability.
We don't think enjoying cheese is a sign of mental disabilities here on Occult Confessions.
I don't know why this is so funny.
Until at the age of 6, he correctly multiplied 13 and 97 in his head.
Could not do that.
Yeah, no.
If you asked me to.
All right, son, that's impressive enough, I suppose. How about we try this? What are the number of seconds in 2,000 years?
No, dear, that's much too hard.
Hush, woman! Let the boy answer.
You're putting too much pressure on him.
I said, hush!
63,072,000,000 seconds.
Hot damn.
He took 6 seconds to give the number of hours in 38 years, 2 days and 7 hours.
332,935.
I'm guessing they picked that at random, or else that's a weirdly specific request to make of a 7-year-old. He also calculated what's called the 6th Fermat number, which is 2 to the 32nd power plus 1.
4,294,967,297.
And determined in his head that this wasn't a prime number and that its divisor is 641. More recently, Shakuntala Devi, known as the human computer, born in Bengaluru, India.
Oh, I think I watched this on a documentary.
You did.
Her father was meant to become a Brahmin priest, but joined the circus instead.
Oh, wow, that's a career change.
He discovered Devi's ability to memorize numbers while teaching her a card trick and took her on tour showing off her skill. In 1977, she gave the 23rd root of a 201-digit number in 50 seconds. Her answer was confirmed by the Univac 1101 computer, and they had to write a special program for the computer to even be able to do it in 1977. Now, your like phone could do it.
No, probably not.
No,
There's
I
too
don't
many
think our
numbers.
phone-
Now your freaking desk lamp could do it while your refrigerator calculates a larger number.
That's right.
In 1980, she multiplied 2 randomly selected 13-digit numbers correctly in 28 seconds. With both Devi and Colburn, the mathematics are happening in regions of their minds that go well beyond the limits of what they're supposed to be able to consciously think in the moment. The speed with which they could conjure these results suggests a powerful flexing of the subliminal mind. We can't do this, right? But in seconds, they can produce these insane numerical results without calculators or paper or anything. Their minds can just do it. So their minds are the same as ours. Their brains are the same as ours in many ways. Like the differences between them are infinitesimally small. And yet they're able to achieve these genius feats.
Wow.
Oh.
I think counting prodigies are impressive because I only got as far as Calc 1. But there are prodigies in every area of human endeavor. Painting, architecture, storytelling, cake. I come up with these episodes in my sleep and write them with my eyes closed. Did you know that?
No.
Just close my eyes and...
I do see you close your eyes quite a lot.
Occult
when you're
away.
teaching.
I occult into the ether.
That's where you go.
So just to wrap up here, how do you guys see genius and mysticism fitting into Meyer's system?
Partially.
Partially. Okay, so what do you find most persuasive?
Genius.
Yeah. The genius part.
Genius. Okay, so tell me about that a little bit.
To me, it just seems interesting because genius and mysticism seem like they shouldn't go together. Like, genius is more of a scientific type of angle, whereas mysticism to me is a more, not like supernatural, but I guess a supernatural. Like,
divine.
That's why
a divine occurrence.
That's why I'm finding it difficult to like put words to what I'm thinking about this because there's just such a contrast to me.
Right.
Oh, genius might feel a little bit... We might feel stronger about the geniuses because it's something that we've all experienced, in a way.
Right, yeah. Okay.
The mystic part is a little confusing to me because, I mean, I'm not religious in any sense and I've never had a religious experience like that. But I've dealt with this genius thing a lot. Like, I feel like it's helped solve all my problems.
Yeah, I know what numbers are, but what is God, Rob?
I mean, there's a testability to it, right? If I ask you what this number is and you come up with the number off the top of your head, then I can easily test and say, fine. But when Jacob Boehm comes back and says, this is the nature of good and evil, we're like, oh, fine, I guess. We have to take your word for it.
That's all I was really saying.
And words don't really do it justice. I think language is a virus, Rob.
You and Laurie Anderson both, yeah. Olivia, what's your perspective on this?
No, that's really what I was, I think, at my core trying to say. Like, genius is a thing that can make rational sense to a large group of people.
So you think mysticism is a bit of a distraction?
I think, I think you don't even need to... I think you could have just stuck with genius.
Mysticism is a muddy area.
That's what I think I was...
Which is fine. I think for our purposes, I think people need to know that that's part of this. But yeah, it's less convincing, right?
I'm not sure why he deliberately kind of cut them up into two.
I think that also...
Well, it's really not. I mean, that's us kind of picking those out because memories in there and apparitions of the living are also part of this. All of these are just points of evidence.
According to Myers, they're all in the same place.
They're all coming from that dark pool of consciousness.
Right.
When we have a mystical experience, we're dropping into the dark pool.
And
when
that's the
Brianna
idea.
does, you do astral projections.
Yeah, and that's why I also
You're
kind of
dropping
have some issues with how they talk about the mystic thing, because in my mind, that's how he described like the whole like God experience stuff. Like that's not.
You don't experience a pure consciousness, you mean?
It's not like that to me.
Well, you're sort of more in a mediumistic consciousness, that you're seeking out points of information or...
I wouldn't separate the two, genius and mystic, because to me there's some things that just kind of flow that I think shouldn't
so
be
Brianna's
separated.
seeing a different perspective on it, that there's
some
consonance.
There is things there that, like, because to some degree, for each... they apply to each other.
Yeah. It's all going back into that dark pool, but I agree, Olivia, some are more persuasive than others. I really like Apparitions of the Living as a guy who studies mediums and stuff because there's a point of evidence for you, and it's a direct point of evidence, but it's also touching on something supernatural. Genius doesn't feel as supernatural. I think it still has supernatural components to it because I can't do the kind of stuff that these accounting prodigies can do. But if you say you saw your dead sister and you know how she died and you know it's facts about her death and you weren't physically present for it and no one told you about it, but you have this information nevertheless, we've got them sort of veridical test, and also we have something supernatural happening.
That's easier to get behind than I had a vision from God.
Yeah.
Nevertheless,
that's what I don't agree with.
If you haven't read Jacob Boehm yet, I suggest you go home and Google the man because I think he's right up your alley.
Because...
I think you might be a theosophist at heart. All right, Olivia, bring us on home, man.
Oh, God, sorry. I just felt so messed up by this episode that I had a moment where I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah, take a moment.
Take a breath
Yeah.
and then close us down.
The secret,
Now you're doing this?
That's the beginning.
I think we broke
You're
her.
starting us over.
I think I just broke.
We have to hereby
My mind
do a
just
thing.
fragmented.
You have to hereby do something.
I hereby adjourn and declare closed this meeting of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors until such a time as we get together and do it again.
Ho!
Ho!
Are we gonna say that now?
So we encourage you to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't yet. We've got one more episode in our series on the soul. If you'd like to go back, we've got a series on lady magic.
Yeah.
Vaginas and things, and also
Vaginas and magic.
on the American Occult. And next series we'll be covering black magic, so go ahead and click that subscribe button. We would love to continue speaking with you. And if you could give us a nice rating on the iTunes
All
or
of
the
the
Stitcher.
stars.
Don't forget to look at our social
Facebook.
media.
Yeah, what's going on with that?
We've got a Facebook, which you can look up just by looking at Occult Confessions. And we have a Twitter, which is going to be Podcast Occult is going to be the handle. And then we also have an Instagram, which what is the actual...
It's Occult Confessions.
It's just Occult Confessions.
Occult Confessions.
Easy enough. And today we had the voices of everybody. Was it everybody? Yeah. We had Shannon Landers. We had Gracie Jordan, Jacob Wheatley, Brandon Walls, and joining us at the table here we have James Kaplangis.
Hello, or goodbye, rather.
Yes, Savannah Verrett.
Goodbye.
Brianna Literal.
Bye.
And, as usual, Olivia Literal.
Bye.
My name is Rob. You have been listening to Occult Confessions. We'll see you for our last episode in 2 weeks on the Quantum Soul.
I'm going to die.